a bright, kind, and intelligent boy whom I loved in junior high school. He was hospitalized with leukemia just before his high school entrance exams. A classmate who was jealous of him sneered,
"Your life is over since you couldn't even take the exams and are a middle school dropout."
Later, at a wedding party for a business partner, he met that classmate again. Justice was served to that same unpleasant person who still had a bad personality. "My name is Susan. I'm 30 years old. My husband Tony is also 30 years old and was my classmate in middle school. We've been married for 3 years now." In middle school, Tony was good at both academics and sports, and he was quite handsome and cheerful, so he was popular with girls. I secretly had a crush on him too. At that time, I was a little chubby, had acne all over my face, and wore glasses. I was really an unremarkable junior high school girl. Mean boys gave me the nickname of plain glasses, and it hurt me. Tony was kind to me and even to the prettiest girl in class. Some boys were jealous of him and said things like, "He's such a goody two-shoes." Oliver was one of those boys who always talked behind people's backs without any basis. Oliver was the one who gave me the nickname Plain Glasses. He also said things like,
"He's probably doing bad things behind the scenes."
About Tony. He was jealous because he couldn't compete with Tony in academics or sports, and he knew that the prettiest girl in class had a crush on Tony. He often spoke ill of Tony, saying things like,
"He can play sports but doesn't join any clubs, he's not sociable, and he's just pretending to be cool."
But I knew. Tony's family was a single-parent household with a younger brother who was still in elementary school. His father passed away early, so he helped his working mother with household chores and taking care of his brother. Tony often came to our parents' supermarket with his brother, and I heard part-time aunties sympathizing with him. I thought Tony was kind not because he was a rich kid, but because he had been struggling since he was young.
"Hey, your pants are shining at the knees. Don't you have any spare pants? You should have at least 5 pairs, right?"
Oliver was teasing Tony again. His family was quite wealthy, so he probably had 5 spare pants.
"And they don't even fit you, do they? They're too short and look terrible,"
he said, laughing. It was true that they were short and showed my ankles.
"Well, I grew taller all of a sudden. My parents said they would buy me new ones, but it's a waste of money. I'm graduating in 6 months anyway,"
Tony said with a refreshing smile while protecting his mother. My heart ached at his smile.
Ugh, poor people are the worst.
Yuri, the one who's lost everything except for being born into a rich family. I wanted to shout that out loud, but as a plain glasses-wearing girl, it was impossible for me. Tony, who always had excellent grades and was at the top of his class, had decided to attend a local public high school with a high deviation value. On the other hand, Oliver seemed to be going to a private high school where wealthy people with moderate deviation values attend. The school is famous for its high donations and is attended by many rich young ladies and gentlemen who go on to prestigious universities. As for me, I was neither of those two and had decided to attend a local commercial high school. Well, I'm just a supermarket girl. It was sad to think that I only had another 6 months to spend with Tony, but I was happy just to see him every day, even though it was just an unrequited love. Acute myelomonocytic leukemia. Tony was suddenly struck by an illness. He had been feeling unwell for a while, but he didn't want to worry his parents, so he acted normally. He suddenly collapsed during class. Leukemia used to be considered an incurable disease. Nowadays, it has become a curable disease with appropriate treatments such as bone marrow transplants. However, Tony had to give up on taking the high school entrance exams. I felt sorry for Tony and cried until my face was swollen.
His life is over since he couldn't even take the exams and is a middle school dropout,
Oliver said happily. When I heard him say that, I felt hatred towards someone for the first time in my life. The middle school teacher had told me to refrain from visiting him because his symptoms were severe. His white blood cells had decreased, and his immune system had weakened, making him highly susceptible to infections. I went to the hospital many times but turned back before reaching it. I wanted to be near Tony as much as possible. The second half of my third year in middle school passed by in a flurry. Of course, Tony was not present on graduation day. However, I heard from our homeroom teacher that Tony was going to undergo surgery after receiving bone marrow from his mother. If he received a bone marrow transplant, he would surely recover. I will definitely go see him when I can visit him. That's right. I'll switch from glasses to contact lenses for the day we can meet. I'll also go on a diet and become beautiful. I thought so and worked hard. As a high school student, I worked part-time at the supermarket my parents owned while waiting eagerly for the day I could visit Tony in the hospital. I went to the hospital reception desk many times to ask the nurses about Tony's condition. When I visited him for the first time, Tony was studying for his exams. At first, he didn't recognize me.
Hi, Susan. Wow. I didn't recognize you at all. Do people change that much when they become high school students?
I decided to take it as a compliment that he didn't recognize me because I had become cuter. My classmates also wanted to visit him, but they were busy with high school entrance exams and their subsequent high school lives. By the time they were free to visit him, visiting hours had ended, and Tony had become a thing of the past for everyone except me.
It can't be helped.
Tony said with a slightly lonely smile. I had a hard time deciding what to bring when I visited him for the first time. I ended up bringing him a wooden 3D puzzle. He was very happy with it and still has it on his desk.
I'm glad you brought me something to do. All I've been doing is studying. I think I can take the exams even though I'm 1 year behind.
I was overjoyed to hear that and knew that Tony would make up for lost time in no time. Although I wanted to visit him every day, I decided to limit myself to twice a week so as not to tire him out. I brought him puzzles, magazines, and snacks that were approved by his doctor. As I visited Tony, I became close with his mother and younger brother. Tony's mother worked as a nurse at the hospital where he was hospitalized. Tony's younger brother had just started middle school and was a lively and mischievous boy, the opposite of his brother Tony. When Tony was discharged from the hospital, I had become so close to his family that I was invited to their celebration party.
Thank you so much for coming to visit Tony so often and worrying about him since he first got hospitalized.
Tony's mother said at the party, revealing that she had noticed my frequent visits. I probably gave away my crush on Tony without realizing that she was his mother. Afterwards, Tony safely entered high school and went on to university with top-class excellent grades and recommendations. I went to a junior college after graduating from a commercial high school and helped out with my family's supermarket office work. We got married 3 years ago. I finally realized my first love and became Tony's bride. A year ago, we had a daughter and became a family of 3. Today, we left our daughter with Tony's mother, or rather my mother-in-law, and attended a wedding party for an acquaintance. The groom is the second-generation president of a large local brewery called Patterson Sake Brewery. He lost his first wife early on and decided to remarry this time. So even though he's called the groom, he's in his 50s. I've been calling him Uncle Patterson since I was a kid. Originally, my father was so impressed with the brewery's sake that he negotiated enthusiastically to handle it at our supermarket, and we've been doing business together ever since. Now we have a family relationship, so Uncle Patterson has been kind to me since I was a child. My family gathered together today to celebrate. Since it was a remarriage and the age is what it is, the bride and groom didn't want anything too flashy, so it was a standing party. However, the food and drinks served were top-notch delicacies, and the party proceeded in a friendly atmosphere. At that moment, a voice called out Tony's name.
Tony? Is that you? You're alive.
Oliver exclaimed. It was rude to ask if he was alive, but when I saw his face, I understood. It was him. Oliver, who had been in the same class as Tony in middle school. Despite being only 30 years old, he had a potbelly and stains on his expensive suit. He held a glass of alcohol in one hand and seemed to have already had quite a bit to drink. He didn't seem to notice me. Well, that's understandable. I'm no longer the plain girl with glasses from back then. But then, he said something outrageous.
What are you doing here, you low-educated middle school dropout?
Oliver asked. Tony and I were both surprised by this.
Huh.
Huh? It was as if time had stopped for this man when Tony fell ill just before high school entrance exams.
With only a middle school education and no high school diploma, his life is over.
Oliver said with pity. I remembered how happy Oliver had been when he said that back in our third year of middle school. My anger boiled over once again. Oliver, is that you? You still haven't grown up at all. You could never compete with Tony no matter what you did, I said, finally telling Oliver what I had wanted to say all those years ago.
What? Who is this woman?
Oh, don't you remember me? I recognized you right away because you haven't changed at all, I said. In reality, the only thing that hadn't changed was his mean-spiritedness. He looked quite different from back then. He hadn't grown much taller, and his belly had grown while his hairline had receded. He looked like a middle-aged man who had lost his spark. Compared to Tony, who was tall and slim, Oliver was like a toad next to the moon.
Hey Susan, calm down.
Tony said, surprised by my outburst.
Wait, Susan? You mean Susan? Wow. That plain girl with glasses has changed. Did she get plastic surgery or something?
This man was the one who gave me that nickname that I never wanted to remember. And he was still as rude as ever.
What are you two doing together? Didn't Susan run a supermarket or something? Did she marry into money? You don't need an education to run a supermarket, do you?
Oliver continued, laughing and making assumptions. At that moment, Mr. Patterson, the groom's uncle, approached them with anger in his voice and asked,
Who are you talking about?
Oliver immediately became flustered and started to grovel.
Oh, Mr. Patterson. Congratulations on your wedding day. Thank you for having us.
Oliver's family was wealthy and owned several restaurants in town.
We've been serving your drinks at our restaurant, and the customers love it. It's true that foodies know what's good.
Oliver said, trying to flatter Mr. Patterson. Ignoring Oliver's flattery, Mr. Patterson said,
You were talking about a middle school dropout with no education who works at a supermarket, right?
Oliver stammered.
No. That was just a conversation between us.
He probably didn't expect to be caught. Oliver was at a loss for words.
This supermarket has been doing business with my family for generations and has always understood and treated our drinks with care.
Mr. Patterson said. Oliver tilted his head in confusion, unsure of what the groom's uncle was getting at. Mr. Patterson turned to Tony and said with a gentle smile,
Tony, it's been a while. Thanks to you, I'm living a healthy life again. I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer a year ago, but you were the one who found it. Thanks to you, I was able to get married again. You're my savior.
What? You mean Tony is a doctor? Don't be ridiculous. He's just a middle school dropout. There's no way a poor middle school dropout could become a doctor.
I couldn't hold back any longer and said, You were in the same class as Tony, so you know how talented he is, right? Even though he fell ill and was delayed by a year, he worked hard and was so talented that he received a scholarship and went on to become a doctor at a national university. You have no right to belittle him. I was about to cry because I knew how much effort Tony had put in.
Oliver, your father is a good businessman and a respectable person, but I don't think you're ready to be his successor yet.
What? Why not?
We're not handling our sake properly. We're storing it in a place that's too warm and exposing it to sunlight. We're not serving it at the right temperature.
I am sorry. I thought it would look better if we displayed it where customers could see it.
Fresh sake should be stored in a cool, dark place at 5 degrees Celsius or below, away from sunlight or ultraviolet rays. That's how we've always done it at our supermarket.
You're belittling people without any basis. I don't want to eat at a restaurant owned by someone who looks down on others because of their education.
Patterson's uncle is cool.
I'm sorry to your father, but I'll have to stop doing business with you. Oliver, huh? No, wait a minute.
After that, no matter how much Oliver tried to make amends, Patterson's uncle continued to ignore him.
Tony, Susan, I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable.
Patterson's uncle shouldn't be apologizing. Rather, we as a couple are the root cause of the commotion. No, I feel better now. He hasn't changed at all since the old days. I've always hated him since then. This is what it means to let off steam.
Is that so? I've never seen Susan so angry before. It was scary. I have to make sure not to make her angry.
Tony said with a smile. Tony has a bit of an airhead side to him. That's also good. I'm sorry, I forgot. I could only blush. I would never vent my anger on Tony. I've loved him since junior high school and will always love him from now on. It seems that Oliver's father apologized and expressed gratitude to Mr. Patterson after the incident. He said, "I'm sorry for the trouble we caused. It seems I made a mistake in raising my son. From now on, I'll start from scratch and train him properly. Thank you very much." Apparently, he's currently undergoing strict training at a restaurant run by a tough craftsman chef, where he can't rely on his family connections. Oliver contacted me only once.
It's all your fault that I'm having such a hard time. It's all because of you. Remember that.
Unfortunately, it seems that he hasn't changed his ways yet. Well, let's remember that we shouldn't have anything to do with him for the rest of our lives. On a Sunday afternoon, I love spending a peaceful time with my husband, having tea while watching our daughter sleeping.
The party incident the other day reminded me of our junior high school days. When I was hospitalized, no one came to visit me. Well, that was because of my illness, but I was still lonely. I was really happy when Susan came to visit me. Susan is so beautiful now, and yet she's always been by my side. I'm really grateful.
It was the first time Tony had talked to me like this.
When I was a student, Susan always paid for our dates. And my illness is something that can't be said to never recur, so I was really hesitant to propose.
If Tony hadn't proposed, I would have done it, I said.
Thank you. I'm glad Susan is here. I'll do my best to make Susan and our daughter happy from now on.
I'm glad I met Tony too. It's great that I've loved him for so long. I don't have to try hard because I'm already happy enough.